So welcome to my talk. Thanks to be here late. I appreciate that. So today I'm going to talk about a tool that I build, BurpSmartBuster. So I'm Patrick Matthew. My information are there, and everything will be on my GitHub. So I'll just release it in the next few days. So who am I? I'm co-founder of Hackfest. I work as a pen tester, purple team at Security Compass. I'm Canadian, French Canadian, so sorry for everything wrong that I say. So I started mostly hacking in mid-90s. I've been in this for that long. I did a college and university degree, and I'm technically in bug bounties, and that tool came mostly from bug bounty, as you will see the problem that I had. So did anyone have heard of this before DerbyCon, except you guys? No? That's cool. I almost put your name, but cool. All right, so what is BurpSmartBuster? So it's a plugin inside Burp, an extension, and the main objective is to replace DerBuster and Derby. So by doing tons of pen tests and bug bounty, this idea came up. So why is that I did want to add a smart to those tools, as DerBuster and Derby are pretty straightforward with word lists. So the plugin, the way it works, it will technically just use the URL that is sent through Burp when you proxy. And I use this information to create smart requests, like I will show you. So the state of the tool currently, it's been released at the demo labs at DEF CON last month. And there's a working version on GitHub. And the goal today is really to let you guys know about the tool, what it's doing, but also to have the community join in to add more features to it. There's a lot of to-dos, a lot of things that I had in mind, which are not done yet, but I will explain you. And the code is really documented, so I'm kind of freak with this. I add a lot of to-dos, comments everywhere, so it's really easy to get in and add stuff to it. So why the tool? So like I said, after doing a lot of pen tests, web application tests using DerBuster and Derby, you quickly find out that those tools are really low efficiency. There's no application context at all. It's just a word list that is push and trying to brute force directories and file. So there's no logic option. There's no technically nothing. And there's a ton of files that devs and sysadmin and others that will wrongly upload those to their server. But when they upload these files, usually they will have specific names which make sense with the application and the website. And the word lists that are used by Derby and DerBuster are based technically on the robot.txt files from the top 1000 of Alexa website. So these lists of directories and files are based on websites which are not the website you're testing. So you're doing tons of unwanted check. And some example, if you look into the files, you'll see directories like /test Bob or something like this, which is a test that somewhere Bob did, but you're testing this inside a web application which is not related to a people named Bob, right? So there's also the problem that when you use DerBuster, you need to do manual input. So if there's directory that exists, you need to tell the tool to check this specific directories. It's not checking file extension, and it's not checking the current context of what you're browsing to or what the website got. So it's not checking the file names, the directories, the domain name, etc. And another one, which is in my list of to-do, is it's not also checking the technology of the website you're looking at. So if you want to test a website which is PHP, why will you look for ESP file, right? So like I said, what I want to do is add context to the brute force tool, add a stealth mode, limit the number of requests if you want to be more stealth or to slow things down. Offer a simple and documented code so you guys can join in and add feature to the code. Other objective, like I said, it's application context. So my tool, when you browse a website, Burp will get the URL. Inside the URL, if there's a directory, a file name, and an extension, it will use those things to brute force other similar file based on this. So it's a dynamic content, and that's what it makes totally the difference here. So the feature that I add mostly when I do a request, it's at first it will check for specific files that exist, but only once. So when you go to a victim.com site, it will go and check the robot.txt, gather all the diswallow directories and file, and will test if those files exist. Then I have a spider option. The spider option will spider the number of URL that you define first, and will gather nouns and verbs from the page is spidering, and you can reuse those words that have been written on the website to parse and brute force more directories and file names inside this website. Then I also check for the sitemap. So the sitemap contains everything of the website, so you can set like check n number of URL inside the sitemap. I use the current directories, the current file. I have a list of prefix and suffix. So if you got file.php, I will do file suffix.php, and the suffix, I'm brute forcing things that make sense, like I will show you. And I got the suffix too, so suffix file.php. I do also the same with the extension. So the .php dot something or dot something else. So I will just switch it, but based on the file that you just browse to. So it's making sense in the context. And the fun thing is it's the difference, well, from DerbyCon is that you don't run the tools. You just activate it in Burp and you browse the website. And that's it. While you browse, it takes the URL, do the brute force in the background, and give you results. So you just browse, do your pen test, do your stuff, and then you got results at the same time. It's multi-threaded, and it works in the pro version and the non-pro version of Burp, which is really interesting. Question?
How do you activate it in Burp? How do you activate it?
Yes, so inside Burp, I'll show you right after. The question is, how do we activate inside Burp, the plugin? So inside Burp, there's an extension tab, and it's a Python file that you just put there. You click activate, and that's it. It's really simple. So like I said, it works in the non-pro version, which is interesting. And even the multi-thread works. So it's doing tons of requests. It's not limited like maybe some feature of Burp are. I add the log. So everything is logged into a file. And everything is based on an INI file that you got configuration right there. And finally, the data JSON, which are all the directories, file extension, etc., that the tool is using. So if we look at how things are done, so inside the code, the Burp extender is the class that you extend to gather requests from Burp in Python or Java if you have code in Java. So at first you got a function which is register extender callbacks, and inside this one, each time there's a request, this code will execute. So from there, the code requests the function process HTTP message for any request or response. So inside the code, I just put a if that's a request made by you while you browse. Do my smart request function, and it will go use the URL, parse it, and do the request based on it. I create other class, which are the spider, the logger, the requester, which is the multi-thread class to create all the requests on a queue. The URL data is a parser of the URL. And I got the requester worker, which are based with the multi-thread. So, like I said, the process HTTP message really intercept everything. And if you look at the code, there's really the important thing is to check where the request comes from. Because Burp, each time you do a request inside the tool, it tells you from where it's coming. So you need to check that it's not coming from yourself, because it will just loop infinitely, which I totally did at first. Was not a good idea. So the smart request will do get smart data. So it will execute the code to get the robot.txt, the spidering, the sitemap ons, and then it will create the dynamic content based on the domain name, the file name, directories. All this is put inside a queues that the requester will just go in it, empty it, and create requests to check if the file exists or not. The other thing is the application context is not just the file name, so it's also the domain name. And what's really lacking inside DerbyBuster and Derby is that if you want to check victim.com, maybe the sysadmin upload a file which is victim.zip or something like this, which is maybe a dump of the database, right? So I use the domain name and any subdomain related to it, and I try them all with all the extension that I got in my file. So each directory that I go, I'll try this. So if the admin put this file at the root or at the slash something, I'll technically find it. One of the to-do which is really interesting, but needs to be added to the tool is the application technology. So add a check of what the website is. Is it running on Apache? Is it SharePoint? Is it PHP, ISP, whatever? And based on this technology, I have a specific JSON file doing checks for this specific technology, which will be really interesting. Mostly when I look at SharePoint, it got tons of web services, which people often forget. And those services usually are not restricted, not authenticated. And when you request those, they will give you like all the usernames, all the emails, everything internally. And even sometimes just gave you access to upload or browse the internal website, even from external when it's an intranet website. Seen that, so happens. So the focus stealth option, there's a configuration into the configuration file to limit the number of requests. Everything is there. The only thing missing right now is just the if on like stop after 5 or something like this. Like I said, the code is really simple with tons of comments. And this is the way that how the code works internally. So maybe it's a bit small. So obviously the burp Python file will get the JSON file with the data, the configuration file. When it gets the configuration file, it's getting all the information, like I said, the static one and document one. And we'll go for extension, directories, and files. So you got the example here, like I explained a bit earlier, like file.extension.injection point or file.injection point. So it's checking everything like this. This is the configuration file. So the number of tests, the path of file, extension, number of page requests with the spider, which function to call, so the smart. Things to add to the tool is like just giving the possibility to use a specific word file, word list, like DerbyBuster is doing, or using the spider mode only or something like this. And really important is the in scope. So inside burp, you got the add to scope option. Right now, by default, it's on. If you don't add the website to the scope, nothing will happen. If you remove this option, any click you do will scan everything. Problem is, if you go and test a website, usually there's 3 to maybe 15 websites which are third parties, and requests, JSON, Java, feeds, XML, JavaScript, tons of things that are not on the website you're testing, and the tons of requests that I'm doing will go on all those sites. So one request might turn into, so right now with the option with add to scope, it's around 550 requests for one click. So if you don't do this, you might go and do 5,000 click requests for one click, which the website won't like, right? In your file type, so you got the GIF, JPEG, those kind of file. If you want to reject something, you can add it there. And a technical things, which is the trailing slash. So by default, you always add a slash at the end when it's a directory. But some websites are configured so weirdly that you can remove this option if needed. So this is explained. This is what the data file looks like. So inside the extension section, you can see .zip, .back, .swap, all PHPS. You got a small description. The file prefix. So what's interesting in prefix, I look at everything Linux, Windows 7 and 10, and look for copy of. And when you do a copy paste of a file in the same directory, what it's happening. So you can see in prefix and suffix. So dash copy or copy, space copy or copy of, old, just the tilde, just a dot sometime. So all those files based on Ubuntu and Windows, if someone do a copy paste and upload it by error to the website, this will be catched. And the interesting part is that you can catch those files because of the context of the application and the current URL, which you cannot find with a specific static list of DerbyBuster. And then you got files and directories that you look for, config file, the Git directories, and all those things. My data file is not that huge. It can be add, but the most critical stuff is there. Yep. So when you run the tool in command line, well, anywhere that you output the results from the extender, you will see something like this. So by default, you got the verbose option, which tell you what function has been tested and what the URL is. So you can see a request prefix for this file. So it add a tilde, and then it add a dot. You can see old index of copy 1, 2, 3, 4. And at the end, you see this file exists and the code that is returned. So 403, a 200, maybe a 404 or something like this. But the thing is, they might be false positives too. Problem is that sysadmin and server configuration won't be the same for the 404 errors. The problem, well, by default, the RFP tells you that when there's a page that doesn't exist, you need to return a 404. But nobody mostly do it. So you get a 200, which is a file that exists, but inside the text of the page, it will tells you that this is a page that doesn't exist, or it's a 404, but in text. So I'll show you right after what I did with this. Next step of the tools, like I said, a technology check. Adding, also this comes from a comment from DEFCON, adding a concept of community data that is sent to an anonymous web services. So if you all use the tool and you find a directory which is /config, it will just tell the web services like, we found /config. It's a real data that exists out there. And we can have like a ranking. So if there's 3,000 people finding this directory, it might be like everywhere. The thread speed, by default, it's just a thread that it's intense, and it might not be liked by people that you test the website. So I need to add a thread speed limit. The spidering is getting the nouns and numbers, like I said, but I'm not using it right now, so just a function to go over it. And yeah, for sure, there's some small technical fix to do. Sorry. And like I said, the 404 needs to be fixed, but technically it's mostly working. So this is the code. It's a bit small, but what it's doing for the false positive verification of the 404, I create a MD5 hash, random one, doesn't matter. And I request this hash on the website. So website.com/the hash. I'm pretty sure that this will never exist, right? And you use this result to see if the page, what the page gives you as an error. So if the response status is 404, it's a normal case. Every 404 is considered normal. If it returns you a 30 something, you base the fact that 300's error might be false positive. So I just want to add a message like this might be false positive, because it's mostly impossible to guess what the code is doing on the website behind. And if the response is a 200, so the most wrong one, I use Beautiful Soup, which is an API that parses HTML. And I look for text which is like page not found or 404 or something like this. If you testing a website that says a text which is not in the code, you add a if with this code, and that's it. So the code is there. The only difference, the only thing that needs to be done is add a if based on this to say in the results like this might be the false positive. The technology, the way to do it is, like I said, if the server is Apache, do Apache checks. If it's SharePoint, do the SharePoint checks. If it's PHP, do those checks. And technically, just doing a class with this kind of function based on data of JSON file, which has all the directories and file to look, should be easy. The community data, like I said, and some technical fix. So right now, I'm using an INI file for configuration. I didn't do a GUI inside Burp. I don't like coding Java GUI, so I just didn't do it. But it's welcome if someone want to help. One of my colleagues sent me the configuration of the INI inside a GUI, so I just need to add it. But I also want a box with the results, not just getting results inside the console. It's not that great right now. And any ideas that you might have are welcome for sure. So that covers it. Any question? All right. I'll just try to do a small demo quickly. I got a few minutes left. So inside the directory, I got Apache running. And you can see that at the root, there's copy of index.html, index.back, so a back file, html.back, the normal HTML file. And I got a config directory with web.config inside it. So when you go inside Burp, you go to the extender, you add the BurpSmartBuster file, which is a Python one. You load it, and that's it. You need to do, like I said, the add to scope. So right now the localhost is add right there. And when you, I'll just go here. So the result will just appear in this page if everything works. When you do the click, nothing works. Yeah, as usual. Yeah, I know. Did the same thing at DerbyCon. Oh, there you go. So those are all the things that it looks for on the website. So all the directories, all the extension for the smart domain. So it's looking for localhost.doc, .zip, .tar, .whatever. Then the request files, so the specific critical files that I need to look at. There's tons of those. And at the end, it tells you that those directory exists or not. And those are false positive because this is a Kali, and everything that runs on Apache, which is like .htaccess, is returned as a 4 or 3, even if the file exists or not. You got this one, which URL exists, which is a /config, so that works. And is there any other? Yeah. So when you go to the website and you try /config, which will give you this awesome directory. So it will tell you that inside /config, there's the web.config file, which is there. But again, the .htaccess, the false positive, came up here. So the only things to add will be maybe like when it's a 4 or 3, add a warning saying maybe it's not, maybe it's a false positive. So that's, the demo is kind of boring. I mean, it's just giving you results, right? So, but it works. Thank you. So I'm going to be here if anybody have any questions. Thanks again.